Finding out my wife's betrayal was like watching the ground crumble beneath me, revealing an abyss I never anticipated. It wasn't just my marriage she shattered. She dismantled the very will to live, leaving me standing on the edge of something dark and unforgiving. When I first saw the texts, it felt like the ground vanished beneath my feet. My wife, my partner for 12 years, was having an affair. But this wasn't just anyone. It was a congressman, hailed as a family man. I pictured them, sharing hushed words over secret dinners, meeting in shadowy corners. Shock wrapped around my chest like a relentless vice. Still, beneath that shock, a burning need for justice emerged, to tear down the polished mask of the man who stole my life. Consumed by madness or fury, I fed every sordid detail to the press, believing it would set me free. Yet, it plunged me into a grim nightmare instead. Each anonymous threat quickened my pulse, fear seeping into my bones, turning my world from a sanctuary into something sinister and unknown. I dropped into the creaky wooden chair, feeling its familiar groan beneath my weight as I settled at the desk. The evening light slanted through the blinds, streaking the room with stripes of golden dust. Her laptop was open. She'd left it that way. I only meant to check a quick email, a habit without thought, a simple interruption between the day's chores and our shared dinner. The email was already drafted, subject line blinking. Without meaning to pry, my eyes skimmed over what I thought were mundane words, until a name caught my attention. The congressman. A chill slid down my spine, curious at first, but then, a tap, intentional. I clicked. My heart skidded to a stop as I stared at the screen, the words burning into my vision. I can't wait to feel your arms around me again. I felt like I'd been plunged into icy water, every muscle seizing in disbelief. Each line I read pulled me deeper into the void, suffocating under the weight of what they revealed. It was all so explicit, so painfully clear. Their secret whispers, their illicit plans, splayed out in sickening clarity. I couldn't tell you how long I sat there, frozen, my hand hovering absurdly over the mouse, as if expecting it to erase everything if I just clicked somewhere else. Questions spiraled wildly in my head. When? How long? Why? But they couldn't penetrate the fog of betrayal thickening within me. Images flashed before my eyes, memories of her laugh, her touch, every intimate moment now tainted, drenched in suspicion. The congressman, his grinning face at campaign events, friendly pat on my back, surfaced grotesquely in my mind. How could I have been so blind? The room felt smaller, walls inching closer in a claustrophobic embrace. Anger boiled up, scorching hot beneath my skin, threatening to spill over. I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop against the wall, but instead, my hands trembled silently in my lap. I opened another message, then another, confirming each unbearable truth, my breath growing ragged. Every letter, every word was a slap, each one deeper and more raw than the last. I watched my marriage unravel through the lens of a digital screen, and the pain hit with an inevitability I couldn't escape. A slick sweat covered my palms, and my breathing turned shallow. A detached calm spread through me, dangerous and cold. Decisions formed in the recesses of my mind, sparks of retribution igniting, fueled by a need to reclaim some semblance of control. This couldn't be undone. There was no going back from what I'd seen. Everything was altered now, fractured beyond repair. A single, sudden conclusion crystallized. I wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. With a single, decisive click, I closed the laptop, determined that this new path would lead not to forgiveness, but to something else entirely, justice on my terms. Her silence was louder than any confession, each moment stretching like an eternity until I couldn't breathe for the weight of it. I paced the living room back and forth, my footsteps barely audible over the thundering of my heart. The room felt smaller, suffocating, walls closing in as if conspiring to crush me beneath the enormity of my own realization. I stopped abruptly, turning to face her. She sat there on the edge of the couch, hands gripped around a pillow as though it might somehow offer her sanctuary from the truth. How long? My voice spilled out, trembling yet forceful, cutting through the thick tension like a blade. She looked up, eyes wide and glassy, a deer frozen in headlights. But still, no words. Just tell me, damn it. I shouted, the fire of betrayal scorching through my veins. I was leaning forward now, hands braced on my knees, gaze boring into hers, trying to find any trace of the woman I thought I knew. "How long have you been lying to me?" I demanded, needing some solid ground to stand on, some clarity in the mess of my own shattered trust. She opened her mouth but faltered, her gaze skirting away to the window, the light there beginning to fade into the dusk like the life we'd built. Each second without her answer was another knife twisting deeper into the wound, the pain dragging through me, sharp and insistent. My mind spiraled with every possibility, each more devastating than the last. "I never meant," she began, finally, her voice a broken whisper that barely reached me. Her eyes met mine again, pleading for something, forgiveness maybe, or understanding. But all I felt was a cold ache where love used to dwell. "Never meant what?" I snapped. "To hurt me? To destroy everything?" The floor felt uneven beneath my feet, the carpet no longer a soft haven but a rugged reminder of what I had thought was solid ground. Her lip trembled as she glanced down, but the anger inside me only swelled further, leaving no room for pity. There was a long pause, and in that silence, I could hear the ticking clock, a relentless reminder of every wasted moment, every unaware moment. I could feel the fraying tether of my restraint slipping through my fingers. "I deserve the truth," I insisted, this time lower, the anger pulling back to reveal the raw, desperate need beneath. She took a breath, shaky and uneven. 6 months, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper, but it thundered through my mind, resonating with the force of a revelation. 6 months. The numbers slotted into place like a malignant puzzle, and with them, everything began to unravel in my mind. My chest was tight, breath stolen away by the enormity of her betrayal. And finally, I felt it, a cold determination forming beneath the storm of my emotions. If this was how she wanted to play it, then maybe it was time I started writing my own rules. There I was, in the dim light of my living room, my face illuminated only by the cold glow of the computer screen. Each click of the mouse seemed to echo in the stillness, amplifying the deafening silence that had become my constant companion. The truth was ugly, a beast lurking beneath my skin, and it was all I could do to keep it from consuming me whole. My need for justice, some skewed sense of fairness, perhaps, propelled me forward even as a part of me whispered caution, urging restraint. I navigated through the sordid details of their correspondence, the emails ranging from mundane exchanges to declarations that made my heart claw at my ribcage, desperate to break free. There was a dissonance, a surreal overlay to the whole endeavor, like I was watching someone else's black and white tragedy unfold. Yet every word was a dagger, familiar in its script and layout, all too real in its intent. I leaned back, my eyes scanning the room as if searching for the ghosts of happier times. The photo frames still held smiles, captured moments of joy that now felt disingenuous, tainted. There was no one here to see this version of me, the one unraveling yet grasping at the fraying ends, intent on weaving some semblance of order from the chaos. I returned to the glow, almost hypnotized by its unforgiving light. As the printer whirred to life, spitting out sheets of betrayals, I kept my fingers steady, pressed firmly against the appliance, grounding myself. Each sheet was a nail in their coffin, the phone records, the receipts, those stolen weekends that had cost me my sanity. I watched as they accumulated, stacking into a narrative I couldn't have imagined from the antiseptic cocoon of our once mutual life. There was no going back now. I muttered aloud to the empty room, realizing fully the weight of the choice I was making as I printed each damning email, my hands shaking with the gravity of what I was about to do. This was less an act of vengeance and more an assertion of my existence, a loud rebuttal against the rewrite of my reality they'd so carelessly authored. Between the whirs of the printer, I could almost hear a chorus, not of voices, but of the memories ricocheting in my skull, each shred of hurt demanding reparation. I wanted them to hurt, yes, but more than that, I wanted them exposed, naked under the harsh judgment of the media's gaze, to understand the isolation they had sentenced me to. The pile grew. I stood amidst my organized chaos, feeling the heaviness lift ever so slightly with each page, as if shedding the weight of expectation with each damning printout. I felt a sob rise like bile in my throat, but it never made it past my lips. Silence was my only companion as I gathered the papers into a manila envelope, sealing the deceit with a tremor of finality, stepping forth into the brittle dawn of my new reality. For a fleeting moment, watching the breaking news banner was like a balm to my wounds, until the first threatening text shattered the calm. The clamor from the TV echoed through my apartment, each word like a drumbeat. Congressman caught in scandal scrolled in nauseating neon across the bottom of the screen. I sat cross-legged on the couch, clutching my phone like a lifeline. The media had always been quick to draw blood, but this time, they were feasting on someone who deserved it. I wanted to revel in it, to let the satisfaction warm my insides, but beneath that warmth was the chill of something lurking, waiting to unravel my small victory. The newscaster's voice was relentless, bare hands grabbing at the sordid details. I tried focusing on their words, letting the revelations wrap around me like a comforting embrace, soothing the sting from all those secrets held too long. But validation is a slippery surface, and I found myself teetering between triumph and apprehension. My phone buzzed angrily, breaking the rhythm of the newscaster's drone. I hesitated before looking. A name from my past stared back at me, the screen bright and unyielding. Jack. For a second, my heart skipped, remembering only too late the familiarity that had turned toxic. I took a breath, teeth clenched as I opened the message. You think you've won, but you should be scared. Really scared. The words blurred in and out of focus, confusion clouded by a sudden shot of fear. It was like the floor had slipped away from beneath my feet, gravity flipping as my stomach twisted. I kept staring, wanting to unsee, to unread. Instead, an unwanted shiver settled on the back of my neck, whispering to stay vigilant. The room felt smaller, air thickening with every breath. My sanctuary now felt treacherous, shelter turned to jail. Outside, the sky dulled as evening crept in, but the chatter from the television remained blinding. I wondered who else might join in this chorus, what other voices from the past would reach around the edges of my life, threatening to drag me back into the shadows I'd fought to leave behind. The next text came just as fast, different this time, a false friend turned foe. You think nobody saw you, but we know. Your turn's coming. My heart thundered, pulse sprinting as I scrambled for a response, but found none. Accusations echoed deep inside. Had I overlooked something, missed a detail? I gripped the phone, knuckles aching, feeling the weight of unseen eyes. The TV, now background noise, continued its insistent hum, but I was beyond its reach, head spinning through scenarios, conjuring threats from the shadows. It was meant to be over, the lies, the deceit, exposed at last. Yet with the truth unfurling publicly, had come this twisted reflection, one I wasn't ready to meet. The fear was a shadow of its own making, but it was there, creeping along the room's edges. Suddenly, the screen flickered again, but I wasn't watching. I was already planning my next move, the cold dread whispering over my shoulder. The soft glow of my phone interrupted the darkness of the room, its screen humming with activity like a restless soul in the night. My heart drummed to the rhythm of an unsteady beat, synced to the urgency of that flashing notification. The air felt thick, like the uneasy pause before a storm unleashes its fury. As I unlocked the screen, a cold dread crept like a shadow upon me, whispering the promise of danger. The message was stark in its simplicity, yet screamed volumes in the silence of my mind. You'll pay for what you've done. The words blurred for a moment, as if my brain was unwilling to comprehend their meaning. But reality crashed in, each letter a piercing shard of fear penetrating deep, settling into the pit of my stomach. The room spun, the walls closing in with an oppressive weight, as though they sought to suffocate my very breath. I had known, of course, that speaking the truth would paint a target on my back, but still, I hadn't anticipated this raw, immediate threat. Who was watching me? Who had the power to send these words with such conviction? I flung myself onto the bed, trying to burrow into the safety of the familiar, the mundane. But the sheets felt like chains, wrapping around me rather than offering comfort. My skin prickled with 1,000 fevered pins, heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs, a prisoner desperate to escape its cage. I thought of the world outside my window, the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of late-night traffic, all oblivious to the storm brewing in the quiet sanctuary of my home. What had seemed like brave defiance now felt ridiculously naive. Each shadow outside seemed to morph, shape-shifting into ominous figures poised to strike at any moment. Trembling, I reached for the lamp, craving the stark reality of light against the dark fantasies of my fear. But even as the bulb flickered to life, it seemed to bring with it only more layers of threat, each vision of safety tainted with doubt. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant siren howled like a spectral warning. I needed to calm down, to plan, to think, but the threads of my mind unraveled in chaotic panic. I heard myself whispering the words over and over, as if hearing them aloud might somehow drain them of their power. You'll pay for what you've done. As if saying them enough could transform them into a meaningless echo, drowned out by reason. But reason felt like a distant stranger, unreachable in the whirlwind of fear. In that moment, I understood that whatever nightmare I'd stepped into, there was no turning back. The only way out was through. The thought galvanized something within me, igniting a flicker of resolve against the darkness closing in. Because if these threats were real, if my life was truly at stake, then the fight was just beginning. The tension in my chest fizzled like a live wire, coiling tighter with every step. I stood at the edge of the protest, my skin tingling as the chants swelled around me. Banners snapped overhead in the brisk wind, slogans smeared across fabric, demands stained in permanent ink. Somewhere in the crowd, a drum pounded a steady, commanding beat. Despite the swell of people, I felt a yawning emptiness inside, a chasm I couldn't fill. Fear clawed at the fringes of my resolve. I was here, defying the threats that had slid into my messages, whispered through back channels of my life, promising harm if I dared to oppose the congressman's corruption. Rational thought might have kept me away, but it was tangled in the desperate need for justice, for something real. The crowd's roar was a distant hum, the placards a blur as I scanned the sea of faces, searching for a familiar threat in every stranger's gaze. There was a tremor in my hands as I adjusted the bandana covering half my face. It was as much for anonymity as protection against the cold bite of fear. Every stranger's eyes seemed to latch onto mine for a fraction too long, each one a potential hazard. There was strength in numbers, or so I tried to convince myself. Around me, people moved as one, a collective wave of courage and defiance. It should have been comforting. Instead, it only heightened my awareness of my solitary mission, the fragility of my presence here. Hey, a voice broke through the din. A girl, barely older than 20, handed me a pamphlet. Her fingers brushed mine, warm and alive. I nodded, clutching the paper, another lifeline in this ocean of unrest. Her smile was fleeting, but the sincerity in her eyes lingered longer, momentarily thawing my guarded soul. But just as quickly, the dread returned. My gaze darted back to scanning. Familiar shadows seemed to loom everywhere, morphing with the ebb and flow of bodies. There was no face, no tangible outline to brace myself against, just the omnipresent threat like a storm on the horizon. I inched forward, deeper into the crowd, letting it absorb me. Every heartbeat thumped loud in my ears, a personal metronome of anxiety and audacity. The congressman's name rang like a bitter chant, each syllable reinforcing why we were all here, why I had to be here. The drumbeat intensified, vibrating through my chest. The crowd surged forward, and I let it carry me, a single drop lost in the tide, yet achingly aware of every shifting current. The chants grew, a wall of sound that might have been hope or despair. I couldn't tell anymore. My purpose was a beacon flickering against the encroaching dark. And then, just beyond the crowd's edge, a shadow shifted. The tide of anxiety crashed, pulling tightly at my stomach. For a heartbeat, the world slowed, crystal clarity bringing every fear, every instinct to the forefront. Whatever lay beyond was real and waiting. Her voice was a siren in the storm, lulling me into a fleeting wish for yesterday, before the betrayal set fire to our quiet life. The sound of her calling my name, just beyond the half-open bedroom door, sliced through the heavy evening air. I paused, hand hovering over the nightstand as if the old lamp could somehow shed light on the shattered shards of us that lay scattered around. "Please," she implored, her words tender skewers piercing the armor of my resolve. I could almost feel the warmth of her presence, even from the threshold. But there was a coldness too, a chill that had seeped into the spaces between us ever since trust fled our marriage. My silence. The words tasted bitter as they left my lips, lingering in the room like the ghost of happier times. I turned, the room shrinking around me as she stepped inside. Her eyes were glassy, pleading, a tide threatening to drown us both if I let it. "I know," she started, a tremor in her voice matching the tremble of her hands, as if they were clutching the hem of a past life. "I know what I did, and I'm so sorry." The apology hung heavy, a lead weight I was expected to bear. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the edge of the dresser, feeling it anchor me. I wanted to lash out, let my anger run wild and unchecked like a beast finally set free. Instead, I breathed slow, keeping that primal scream trapped somewhere deep, where it couldn't harm anything new. "You asked for silence," I muttered, my gaze fixed somewhere just past her shoulder, where light from the street outside flickered like an unsteady heartbeat. "But what about what I've lost?" Her face crumpled at that. The lines of sorrow carved deep, memories etched like scars that only she could see. She took a step closer, the distance between us now no more than a whisper. "I wish I could take it all back," she said, voice breaking over the raw edge of regret. "I'd do anything to make it better. For us. For you. Us." Funny word, that. I said nothing, the silence between us thickening, becoming a living thing I was half afraid, half desiring to strangle. "Just please," she begged again, softer now, quieter, as if begging from a place deep within herself where her past missteps played like a looping reel. The need to forgive, to find peace in the ruins, crashed against the wall of hurt and betrayal. I wanted so much to feel whole, yet here we were, dealing in fractured truths and promises that felt broken before they even formed. I met her gaze finally, my own reflection gazing back from the tears pooling in her eyes. It was then I realized, whatever I decided, it would shape us both, for better or worse. I just hoped it wouldn't break us beyond repair. The kitchen's cool tile pressed against my bare feet as I stood by the counter, dumbfounded, staring at the envelope in my trembling hands. The paper felt oddly delicate, shivering just as I was. I swore I hadn't seen it in the mailbox when I'd taken the dog out, but here it was, demanding my attention. My fingers peeled back the flap, half hoping the contents might be something mundane, yet already dreading what my gut told me would be inside. I slipped the photos out, an eerie chill creeping up my spine as they fanned onto the countertop like a macabre tarot spread, each glossy rectangle a snapshot of my life through a stranger's lens. There was me leaving the grocery store 3 days ago, a grocery bag straining at the seams in one hand, sunlight igniting my overgrown bangs into a fiery chaos. Another caught me laughing on my phone, yet its mirth now felt tinged with a cruel irony. How foolish and exposed I seemed under that unseen eye. My heartbeat pounded in my ears like a drumbeat laid over the silence of the empty house. "Monday," I whispered, touching the edge of a photo with a fingernail, and flinched as if expecting it to burn. It depicted me wandering around the public library, gazing at the shelves, oblivious. I could almost smell the woody lignin, that familiar book scent, as vividly as if I was still there. A shot framed from behind as I stood in the checkout line, and the hair on the back of my neck prickled with the memory of unease I couldn't place at the time. Someone always watching, always behind me. Panic brimmed up, hot and sudden, like a dam bursting in my chest. My breathing turned ragged and shallow, the whole room closing in with each breath, walls threatening to crush my rising panic into something unbearably raw. It was as if the photos peeled layers off my life, each flash preserving more than just a moment, locking in my fear, my naked vulnerability, freezing the evidence of it for whoever held the camera's power. It wasn't just surveillance, it was an invasion, an unwanted possession of my privacy, my autonomy. I tried to suppress the crazy spiraling of my thoughts, but they kept running, tumbling, each image a grotesque fleck in the mosaic of my paranoia. Every mundane errand seemed malevolent in this new light, feeding my dread over who or what might be lying in wait with a camera and patience. The last photo caught my eye, a shot of the street outside my front window, taken through the glass. It was from last night, I realized with a sinking jolt. Anxiety like a snake coiled tight, constricting, blending with reality until the tail seemed to vanish. There was no escape. I backed away, nearly tripping over the chair before catching myself. I had to swallow a scream that threatened to slice through the thick, suffocating air around me. My next move was all that mattered amid this chaos. A truth that clung to me, undeniable and urgent. I sat at the corner booth of the dimly lit bar, the scent of stale beer and faded cigar smoke clinging to everything like an unwelcome guest. My eyes darted to the door every few seconds, anxiety scratching at my nerves with relentless persistence. There was a quiet relief in knowing I wasn't entirely alone, that perhaps in the tangled web of danger, a thread of hope remained. The kind of tension heavier than the steel-blue clouds gathering outside settled in my chest. Then he walked in, looking almost the same as I remembered. Older, sure, but with the same casual confidence. Paul had always been a rock, impervious to the chaos around him. He nodded at me, a half-smile playing on his lips, and slid into the booth opposite without ceremony. "Been a while," he said, his voice a gravelly anchor in the tempest of my mind. He looked at me with a blend of curiosity and mild concern. "Too long," I murmured, managing a small smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Somewhere behind my ribcage, relief breathed a small sigh. Knowing someone you could trust was there. It was like finding solid ground in the middle of a stormy sea. Paul ordered a drink. We talked about inconsequential things at first, a dance of words meant to cloak the underlying urgency. My fingers traced nervous circles on the wooden table, patterns no one would ever see. Finally, his eyes met mine, full of patience yet demanding honesty. "So," he began slowly, "tell me why you really called." I exhaled slowly, the tension loosening just a fraction. "I'm in deep, Paul. I need to know what you can find out. About someone, something." I paused, grappling with the nameless fear that made the words hang in the air. His expression shifted slightly, a knowing look of seriousness crossing his face. "And by someone you mean trouble?" I nodded, swallowing past the bitterness of my predicament. The noises of the bar, conversations, laughter, the clinking of glasses, seemed a world away. "There's something going on, threats, shadows I can't see, but can feel. I just need to know who, or what, is out there before it's too late." He leaned back, pondering, his gaze flicking over my shoulders as if assessing unseen risks. "All right," he said finally. "I'll talk to a few people. See what I can dig up. You're not in this alone. But you've got to be careful," he warned, leaning forward, voice dropping to a covert whisper. "This kind of thing, sometimes it's too dark to just shine a light on." I nodded, my heart pounding with a mixture of hope and foreboding. His words wrapped around me like a lifeline, promising no guarantees but a chance. As Paul stood to leave, he squeezed my shoulder, a silent vow of support. In that moment, a sliver of clarity cut through the fear. This might be just the beginning, but I had reached out across the chasm. And somewhere, amidst the lurking shadows, I felt a flicker of fight ignite within me. I stared into the remnants of what I once knew, my fingers splayed on the cold kitchen table, tracing patterns in the wood grain I hadn't noticed before. Victory has the strangest smell, like cigarettes left burning too long, the whiff of scorched hopes. There's a weight in my chest I can't shake, heavier now, somehow, than when I first set things in motion. The room is too quiet. Absurd, how silence can press in from all sides, so loud it's suffocating. My own breath becomes a steady rhythm, rising and falling, a countdown of sorts, marking the space where other lives used to intersect with mine. I thought victory would feel more like sunlight breaking the clouds, but all I've found is the hollow echo of burned bridges and the unknown beyond. I never expected revenge to come without consequences. In the deepest caverns of my mind, I crafted scenarios where justice left me feeling whole, or at least healed. Yet, here I am, looking at the jagged pieces of life that refuse to fit back together. The people I hurt, their pain reverberates, finding me even in this isolation I've created for myself. It spills over into the shadows, mixing with regret so dense it chokes. The wall clock ticks relentlessly, each second reminding me of time's unending march, unbothered by human folly. It's utterly indifferent to the turmoil of my soul. My phone buzzes once, its sound slicing through the silence, offering a tether to the outside world I've willingly untethered from. I ignore it, let it fade into the stillness once more. I rise from the table, feet dragging across the floor, feeling every groove and imperfection underfoot. My reflection in the window is ghostly, half-formed against the darkening sky, a shadow of the person I used to be. There's a world out there continuing its course, yet I'm trapped on this side of the glass, caught in a web of my own spinning. Walking away was supposed to mean freedom, a curtain closing on an act too long and dreary. Instead, it left me staring into the abyss of what comes next, the script unwritten and terrifyingly blank. A drip from the faucet plinks into the sink, the sound crisp and echoing, pulling the moment taut before it snaps back into the waiting silence. Amidst all this, a stray thought nudges itself forward. What if this is what I truly wanted? Not the satisfaction of a plan fulfilled, but the truth revealed in all its stark ugliness, casting light into corners I'd rather stayed dark. Maybe this was never about winning, but about seeing things for what they really are, stepping into the light, however harsh and unflattering. I drag a breath in, deep and deliberate, feeling it spread through and ground me, planting roots among the uncertainty. Even here, within the aftermath, there's something strangely liberating. There's a path forward, though unmarked and treacherous. A journey I'll have to take with each heavy step into this new, uncharted silence.